Happy New Year. I hope you had a great time during the holidays, and I wanted to wish you a happy and healthy New Year for 2024. And I wanted to start this first newsletter video of the year by sharing a brilliant analysis realized by Gavekal, an independent macro research company that produced the kind of analysis that you will not find from an investment bank. This company was launched by Charles Gave, a French financial entrepreneur who I deeply respect for the independence of his analysis based on facts and the study of history. Because, hey, it's often not any more new than it was the time before. Anyways, his son, who took the lead of the research firm, shared last week a brilliant paper for free. It's in French, though, and I could not find it in English. It challenged my personal view, which I always find interesting because it's how it helps you better understand how the world works. And it also helped me understand that de-globalization is actually only a perspective, which as a Stoic I should have known. What can be perceived as a deglobalization from our side, from the West side, can also be seen as a globalization from the East side. So the paper starts with the example of the Ottomans taking Constantinople, today's Istanbul, in 1453. The Ottomans were now controlling the Mediterranean Sea and the major access routes of goods, mostly coming from Asia to Europe, goods such as spices, pepper, silk, and many others. The Ottoman control over maritime and land routes could certainly be seen as a deglobalization event, as it was significantly impacting negatively the global trade in the world, such as it was understood at the time. But what actually happened? Europeans needed to find other ways to import the goods they needed. This is how Columbus discovered America in 1492, looking for a path to India, and how Vasco da Gama sailed around Africa towards India in 1498. One proverb comes to mind at that point, that necessity is the mother of invention. At this point, the Ottoman Empire sunk into irrelevancy. When Ottoman in Constantinople certainly had the impression of the world deglobalizing, Europeans did have a quite opposite sentiment. Global trade, which was disappearing in one place, was actually resurfacing stronger in another place. The unintended consequence of Ottomans blocking trade routes was actually a strong development on the European side, with the colonization of America, colonization of Africa, grabbing the largest share of gold in the world, etc. And the rest is actually history. So why tell this story now? Because again, it might not be so different this time. The West tried to block Russia access to payment system, to wreck the Russian economy at the time Russia had already significantly withdrew from the global systems and de-dollarized. So what did the Russians do? They simply opened new outlets for their economy, commodities principally, obviously, traded in local currencies with China, India, Brazil, Thailand, almost all emerging countries. And global trade between Russia and emerging markets actually went exponential. Some of them are also really happy to resell gas and oil to Europe with a margin. As I wrote in a LinkedIn post when the West started imposing sanctions in 2022, sanctions never work, and the Russian economy actually grew in 2023 when it was supposed to collapse. And if anyone had another ridiculous idea, let's remind everyone that Russia's industry is now in full war mode. Considering China now, the West encouraged companies to bring back their production units from non-democratic countries. So what did China do? Similarly as Russia, China found new markets for its products, increasing their quality, and started exporting massively automobiles, power plants, turbines, tractors, and more towards India, Indonesia, Brazil, Saudi Arabia, and more emerging countries. China has become in 5 years only the biggest automobile exporter in the world. Cars you will see in emerging countries, but not in the West. China now exports more to South Asia than it exports to America, when in 2017 only, exports to South Asia were only about half of what was exported to the US. In the process, China's balance of trade has nearly tripled over the last few years. And that is the law of unintended consequences for both Russia and China. It appears that the West has created the biggest growth potential for the BRICS or emerging markets. Talk about shooting oneself in the foot. Well, it might actually be in the head. So now what do we see? Global world trade is still rising thanks to the rapidly increasing trade between emerging markets. There will be a greater interconnection between emerging markets, especially within the Asia plus Russia area, fostering growth with trade infrastructure development on land, which actually makes the US control over the global seas of the world less critical. And BRICS will be a real thing and likely the center of future economic growth. I believe we are witnessing the change of balance from West to East as the unintended consequence of the West trying to block trade and punish their enemies economically. We're seeing it with always more countries applying to join the BRICS, with even long-term allies such as Saudi Arabia turning their back to the US. There is one last option for the West to remain the leading power in this world, and this is the worst. But it's a full different discussion that deserves another video, I believe. Anyways, I really encourage you to read that piece if you can. It's in French, and I'll put the link below. Or check directly the Gavekal research website that is full of amazing research and perspectives on the world, which is in English, by the way. There's a subscription required, but there's also a free trial available. Last note, before anyone whining they're the bad guys, Hitler and Mao and all that that I receive all the time, I post that kind of thing, I want to reaffirm that I'm not trying to give a moral assessment of the situation here. I'm only trying to share what I believe to be the closest assessment to reality. On that note, I wish you will have a good weekend and see you next week. Bye.